It's the week of April 30th, 2018, and you're listening to the Pioneer GrowingPoint Agronomy Podcast. Today we discuss current planting conditions and progress across southeast and central Minnesota. I'm your co-host, DuPont Pioneer Field Agronomist Josh Shofner. With me is DuPont Pioneer Field Agronomist Brian Buck. This is episode 9 of 2018. Welcome back, listeners.
Well, Josh, we're back on the road again today. We are live down at Fillmore Central High School in the Ag classroom. I believe this is your alma mater. Did you graduate here, maybe at the end of the last century?
Yeah, I did, and I don't know if it's a good or bad thing. It's the first time I've been in the building since I walked on graduation day, so it is really good to get back here to Harmony and spend some time with the kids here, and I think we got a good show lined up, Brian.
Yeah, so we're going to go through some rapid-fire questions today. So we've done that before as a segment. Fun way to, I think, answer some questions that we've had from the field over the past couple weeks. So, Josh, before we get to that, what are the conditions like out there? What are you seeing in the field?
Well, certainly things picked up over the weekend. I think one of the frustrating things is we came down from Goodhue this morning, both of us. We still saw some snow in the ditch here and there, which, usually isn't a good thing, but certainly field activity really kicked in over the weekend. A lot of growers were doing some planning, getting their practice day in, getting that first 20 or 40 acres in, getting things shook loose, and certainly a lot of anhydrous, a lot of floaters, a lot of diggers in the field today, and I anticipate this afternoon will be pretty busy with planting across the whole area.
Yeah, I'd say soil's really starting to get fit in a lot of areas. The biggest thing is just, is it going to rain or is it not? Even if it does, it looks like it'll be a pretty warm rain, and things should turn around pretty quick after that. So,
yep, for sure.
Things are moving along pretty good, so hopefully we can keep that going as the spring progresses. So, Josh, to get started with the rapid fire segment, first question we had this week was, how do you determine if a field is fit to plant?
Oh, that's a good question. And that might vary by each producer up and down the road. Some people kind of just gauge it on when their neighbor goes. I'm a couple days away, and some look at it a little bit different. But certainly, Brian, the best way to do it that I like to do is just kind of take my shovel or my trowel, dig down 2 to 4 inches, and really kind of see if I can form a ball out of that soil. Maybe kind of rub it between my thumb and forefinger, see if I can create a ribbon. If that ribbon really forms out there a couple inches, we're probably not quite there yet. But I'd say that's one of the best ways I have to look. Hey, is it fit? If I'm creating a ball and it's sticky and it doesn't fall apart when I'm done, or it ribbons off my thumb, we're probably not quite there yet. Certainly for what I'm seeing, Brian, a lot of soils are getting there. It's not every field. The frost is really variable. But that's the best way to check, and certainly you want to be checking that to make sure it's fit. We get one chance to get it right, and we got to be patient where we need to be.
Yep.
So, Brian, question number 2. This question just came up quite a bit. How deep should I incorporate my urea after we make that application?
So that is a good question. So when you're thinking about incorporating urea, obviously you're going to have it spread. A lot of times it's just on soybean stubble that hasn't been worked yet. You're going to go out there with a field cultivator and work that in. So when you look at urea, a lot of people talk about if it sits on top of the surface, the volatilization that can occur. There's a lot of volatilization that can occur also if it's not incorporated deep enough. So to get it to a point where it's fairly stable, you need the urea down into the soil about 2 inches. In order to do that, you're going to have to set your field cultivator almost twice as deep as that. Try to get closer to 4 inches. Now, when I say that, I know that's not perfect, because a lot of times it's maybe a little wet 4 inches deep, and you're going to be pulling up stuff you don't want to, and you really can't dig that deep. So depending on the situation, if you do have to shallow up, it may be one of those situations where you use a urease inhibitor just to make sure you're not actually volatilizing urea that's just lightly incorporated.
I got one thing to add to that before I ask the next question here, Brian. But one thing when you think about that, if you do look at that, say you incorporate at 1 inch, or your digger set at 2 inches, that's actually 4 times more volatile than not incorporating at all. That's just an interesting rule when you think about that, the value of making sure we get that incorporated a full 2 inches.
Yeah, so that surface or volatilization first week is not that bad. Incorporation, just shallow, it is bad in the first week.
It is.
So. Next question, Josh. What should my planting depth for corn be?
2 inches.
Next question.
Next question. Simple as that. That's where it needs to be. Brian, we talk about this all the time. If I look at the most common mistake at planting, it's shallow planting. That's the biggest issue we go on. I rarely ever go on a service call where it's planted too deep. I don't stress out about 2.5 inches deep. I do stress out about 1 inch deep, big time. From a standpoint of root development, even emergence. In most cases, some people might think, Brian, that shallowing up a little bit, it might get the corn out sooner. In most cases, it's going to come up slower and more uneven and actually lead to a lot of challenges with root development down the stage. So 2 inches, no questions asked. Make sure you check that. Not uncommon when I do a service call and they planted 1 inch deep, and every acre is 1 inch deep. I ask what happened. It's like, well, it's the same setting as last year. And they never even checked it once. So certainly make sure we get that right. Be checking every field. It will vary farm by farm, field by field as conditions change, settings. So make sure you get out and check that if we can. Brian, next question. What should I do if I can't get my fertilizer in my field and it's fit to plant? Certainly, Brian, the retailers are going to be stressed here with everyone planting the same day. What should we do?
Yes, that's a good question. So I think every operation is going to be different, like every other thing in agronomy. But when I look at it from my standpoint, whether you look at our internal data we've had with our plots or the University of Minnesota data, so I'll reference University of Minnesota. So from April 25th to May 30th, you lose about 0.5% of yield in corn per day. So 200 bushel corn, that's about a bushel per day. So say you're 4 days out on getting a fertilizer application from the retailer, that's 4 bushel, right? That's over $10 an acre if you wait. Or if you just go out, plant, and come back and spread later, at least you're capturing that early planting. And we don't know what the weather's going to do. So what if 4 days later it starts raining, and then we're out for another week? All of a sudden you've lost quite a few bushels and quite a bit of opportunity. So to me, I think it's always good to plant when the soil's fit. It's not going to have to be all your acres, but it's enough to at least get you going.
Oh, I agree.
Next question. So, Josh, is it too early to start soybeans?
It's not. I actually have a few growers in Southeast here that have some soybeans in already. Certainly not too early. And really, it kind of going to piggyback on your last conversation about the value of early planting with corn. It's the exact same with soybeans. As we get, probably, Brian, to May 5th through the 7th, we'll be giving up probably 0.4 bushel per day just on planting date. And certainly, if you talk to anyone that looks at high-yielding soybeans as we try to push the bar and get more yield out of soybeans, the number one thing they say, it's all about early planting. Mm-hmm. You got to plant early, or else that top-end yield potential just isn't going to be there. And certainly, a lot of times that's a challenge. We've got to plant our corn first. Some growers do have multiple planters, but if you do have multiple planters and the manpower, I'm a person that the day you start planting corn, you start planting beans. The insurance date varies. You got to look at that, but if you're past that insurance date, we should start right away and take advantage of that. And it's the best way to raise yields without having to spend more money.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was in a breakout group once with agronomists from all over North America, and every single one said the best way to increase yields in their soybeans was to get them planted early. So it doesn't matter where you're at. It's a great way to increase yield on beans.
Absolutely. Last question, Brian, of the rapid fire. As the calendar creeps forward, should I still use a soybean seed treatment? A question we get very commonly.
Yeah, so for me, soybean seed treatments are important all spring. So early season when it's cool and damp, we worry quite a bit about Pythium. They have great protection on that. As the season progresses, a lot of time it does get warmer and often it does stay wet. But there's other diseases that are prevalent. Phytophthora is one that can be very prevalent also, or rhizoctonia. So depending on how much moisture we have, how hot it is out, there's different diseases that do thrive. And the other thing with that, as we get later into planting, I think we don't want to risk having to replant even more because, if you have to replant beans that were planted, say, May 1st on May 15th, that's not as bad. But if you plant May 15th and you have to replant June 1st, that gets pretty tough and you're losing a lot of yield. So to me, they're important all year long, maybe even more important as we get late.
Yep, for sure. So that kind of wraps up the rapid fire, Brian. One other topic we did want to talk about alfalfa stand assessment here. Certainly a question I've had a lot of calls on the last week. And one of the challenges, Brian, is we just haven't quite had enough regrowth to really have the opportunity to go out there and evaluate that. This week we're going to, and certainly if you do get a little bit of moisture, it's really going to perk up. But certainly, Brian, we'll be out there. Certainly follow us on social media. We'll have a lot of stuff out there in social media this week as it progresses on alfalfa. But, Brian, some things we want to look at, it varies a little bit, but really when we're evaluating these established stands, especially some of these ones that are second, third year, we're really kind of looking at what's that crown health and do we got at least 4 plants or better per square foot. Those are probably two of the things we're going to want to look at the most.
Yeah, so depending on what time you scout your alfalfa, if it hasn't really greened up yet, looking at the plants that are alive and looking at those stems is most important. You want that 4 to 5 healthy plants to have a good stand. Once we do get more regrowth, it's nice we can actually look at stem counts, and that's your most accurate way to determine how much yield you're going to get from your stands. Over 55 stems is a great place to be. That's a great alfalfa stand. When you get into that 40 to 55 range, that's kind of marginal. Anything below 40 that's an automatic termination pretty much from a yield standpoint. But 40 to 55 is kind of in that in-between ground. Stem counts are better than counting plants. It's just we have to wait longer to be able to do it.
Yep, for sure. And I agree. That 40 stem is my hard line. If we fall below that, it's time to get the digger out in the roundup and you get some corn on there. So Brian, this is kind of the wrap of our school circuit this spring. We've really enjoyed getting out there and doing this. Brian, we're gonna, barring something coming up, we might take a little break from the show. We'll be back early June. We'll be making the rounds to some of our sales reps all summer, doing some grower meetings and events. And our intern, she'll be coming on soon. She'll be helping us quite a bit with that as well this summer. We're really looking forward to changing up the show a little bit. But Brian, always important to know where to find the show.
Yeah, you can find us on Twitter. I am at FarmerBuck1.
And I am at Josh Shofner. You can also find us on Periscope. We do broadcast every show live. And you can watch the replay there as well.
Podcast.pioneer.com is also a place to access it.
And you can subscribe via iTunes there, so the show is out there on iTunes. Or you can go to YouTube, keyword Shofner, Buck, and Pioneer, and you'll find the show there as well.
That's a wrap for episode 9 of 2018. The show is recorded in Harmony, Minnesota. It is produced by Josh Shofner and Brian Buck. Thanks for listening, and be sure to tune in next time.